The digital clock on the dash reads 3:26 a.m. Outside the cab of the 1979 Ford, Ashley County is deathly quiet, wrapped in a cool, humid fog that feels thick enough to chew. Harlan Wicks, 62 years old and already 2 hours into his haul, listens. The only sounds are the rhythmic drone of the crickets and the low, steady thrum of his own diesel engine. Then, another sound slices through the pre-dawn dark, a distant, jarring boo-boo-boo-boo. It's an 18-wheeler, somewhere up on Highway 82, hitting the rumble strips. Harlan pictures it. Some driver, half asleep, jacked up on truck-stop coffee, letting his rig drift. He sees them every day. Fewer and fewer guys like him. The old-school, independent pulpwooder, the man who owned his own rig in his own time, was all but gone. Most folks these days were leasing their log into J.B. Hunt or one of the other big over-the-road firms. They were signing on for dedicated contract services, a fancy name for a new kind of trap. Harlan knew what it was. A glorified company driver, as one trucker put it on the forums. A man who pays all the bills and expenses, but owns nothing. He understood the pressure. The industry was in what the analysts called a freight recession. The marginal costs of trucking were at a record high. A man couldn't escape the math. Diesel prices were a constant, unpredictable spike. Insurance premiums, driven by nuclear verdicts and rising liability risks, had climbed 12.5% in the last year alone. Truck and trailer payments had risen 8.3%. The unanticipated expenses were what finally broke most owner-operators. The big carriers like J.B. Hunt were offering a solution. Guaranteed capacity, few discounts, and a promise to mitigate the risks of fleet management. It was a siren song for a man drowning in debt. But the Wickes family had hauled logs in this county for over 100 years. They had survived the crashing halt to the virgin pine in the 1930s, when everyone said the second growth timber was practically worthless. They had survived the fall of the old iron giant, the 2019 closure of the Crossett pulp mill that killed the local market. Harlan's hand rests on the 20-speed manual shifter. He's hauling, but not for them. He's on his own absurd mission. He eases the stick into the next gear, flawless and smooth, the engine's RPMs barely whiskering. He's 62, and there are fewer and fewer guys like him left.
Chapter 1. Fewer guys like him. Harlan Wicks slipped the rig into gear like he was pouring coffee. One hand on the wheel, the other feathering the Eaton Fuller 20-speed. That old truck, the 1979 Ford LTL 900 he'd rebuilt boat by boat, growled like a dog you don't have to tell twice. He was easing north out of Crossett, Arkansas, before the sun had even thought about climbing. October fog in the bottoms, a warm front pressing down on cold ground, and the cab smelled like grease, sweat, and Stetson. He didn't speak much, especially not to himself, but the road talked back. Every dip, every curve, he knew it. Had hauled logs out of Ashley County his whole life, knew the families, the timber stands, which curves threw drunks and which potholes the county never got around to filling. His boots had been on this ground since before some of these little outfit owners had been born. And lately, he'd been noticing something more than just wear and tear, something sideways. A truck blew past him in the other lane, clean, silver, leased. J.B. Hunt logo on the side with a kid up in the cab who wouldn't know a bine pine from a blackjack if it slapped him on the ass. Harlan just nodded once to himself. Fewer guys like me every damn day. Not bitter, just the truth. He'd had a conversation a week before with a man he used to haul for. Said he was leasing his operation out to a big outfit, letting the boys in Bentonville handle dispatch from now on. Said it wasn't worth the headache anymore. Insurance, labor, fuel, permits. Harlan had nodded, listened, drank the coffee, said nothing. But inside he thought, that dog won't hunt. Because you lease it, you don't own it. You're just renting your own damn life back 1 mile at a time, paying the notes on a truck that don't belong to you, on roads you don't get to choose, hauling someone else's timber off land you'll never see. Harlan wasn't interested in being a glorified company driver. He was too old, too stubborn, and too damn right about things. They called it grit once, when it still meant something. His pawpaw, now he had grit, started Wick's timber back when most folks were still trying to dynamite the stumps out of the cutovers left from the first clear-cut wave. Pawpaw had come under the Crosset method, smart forestry, single tree selection. Cut the junk, leave the good, burn when needed, wait 5 years, do it again. Pawpaw called it playing the long game, and the long game had paid off. But now, you got folks grinding the land into monoculture pine deserts, just rows of toothpicks for chip mills. No habitat, no shade, nothing but fire risk and soulless pulp. That's why the bobwhites were gone. That's why the deer weren't acting right. That's why the turkeys didn't gobble like they used to in April. That's why Harlan was heading north. He'd read the article 2 months back, buried somewhere behind the commodity reports in a trade magazine his wife swore he needed to throw out. Big liquor companies struggling to source white oak, bad acorn years, bad soil years, too much clear-cutting, and not enough time. Some bean counter quoted in the story had said white oak would be the new oil if the cooperage bottleneck kept up. Harlan had looked up from the article, out toward the grove behind his shop. 8 acres of mature white oak on Pawpaw's original plot, still standing, untouched. He knew right then somebody was going to need that wood. Might as well be him hauling it. 12 hours, Arkansas to Kentucky. Long trip for an old man in an older truck, but the machine was clean, inspected, and ready. New tires, replaced the air compressor, topped off the coolant, and checked every binder himself. The load was stacked like a legal pad, each white oak log measured, sealed, and strapped down with care. He'd drive it himself. No middleman, no brokers, no asking permission. He wasn't just selling timber. He was selling a damn story. Provenance. And wild turkey, hell, they could use it. Last he'd heard, they were flailing. No new story, drinking down across the board. Younger folks weren't buying into all the old romantic frontier stuff. Cowboys were out. Authenticity was in. They didn't want brand narratives. They wanted the real thing. And there weren't many real things left. The CB crackled once, static and silence. He barely touched the knob. Most of the airwaves were dead now. Used to be full of chatter, like Breaker 19, you got your ears on? Now it was political nonsense or drivers selling used tires out of Dayton. He kept the CB for emergencies, for comfort maybe. He preferred the quiet. Out here, nobody bothered you. Out here, nobody asked you if you had a marketing team, if you had a contract. He made his own contract. 1 man, 1 load of white oak, 1 truck he knew better than his own lungs. He wasn't even sure they'd let him through the gates at the distillery. He wasn't sure they'd take him seriously. But he was sure of one thing. They didn't have anybody else like him on the books. And in a world like this one, full of leased rigs, soft hands, and boardroom bullshit, that might just be his edge.